Hello. Hello, police. Yeah, what's the problem, sir? We just drove down our farm track. Yeah. Go and feed our pheasants. We come across a Range Rover with 3 people in it. Yeah. It appears that they're dead. I don't know what's happening. Blood in the motor all over them.
And welcome back to a new video on the Essex Boys case. As always, if you are enjoying the content, please do give the video a thumbs up. And if you're interested in the Essex Boys case, or simply true crime in general, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. A very commonly asked question revolves around the photograph in front of you. And that question, which is often asked, is why does the front of the Range Rover appear to be a lot cleaner than the rear? Now, this video is not to give you a definitive answer to that question, but rather a list of reasons that can possibly explain what we are actually seeing. The question itself is based on a theory that the front of the Range Rover appears to be cleaner than the back, and that this has been cleaned of potential evidence or something else mysterious. So let's take a look at a few possibilities as to what we are actually seeing in this photograph. Now, could this simply be a trick of the light due to the photographic process? We have seen in other photos that a flash has been used to capture images. Whether this was directed to the back of the Range Rover in this particular shot, we don't know. But it could explain why this effect appears, although there does look to be a clear delineation between the front door and rear door of the offside aspect of the vehicle. Now, if we take a look at the back of the vehicle below the green line here, the paintwork appears to be darker. Although this isn't consistent with the fuel flap adjacent to it, it does show a progressive line of drying or evaporation. The theory being that silt, dirt and other particles will hold moisture, with more of this collecting at the bottom of the vehicle from road splashes, etc. And with it naturally being lower down on the vehicle, it will take longer to dry, as any heat retained in the vehicle will dry the top of the vehicle first and the bottom of the vehicle second. The anomaly of the fuel flap is probably due to it being made of a different material and construction to the wing, allowing it to dry quicker in this instance. Also, if we take a look at the tyre in this picture, it displays this fairly well, as the sidewall of the tyre appears to have dried off quite well, but obviously the tread of the tyre is holding a thicker amount of mud and water and is clearly still damp. Now, this doesn't conclusively explain why the front of the vehicle appears to be cleaner, but it could still be drying, as the front of the vehicle would have collected more spray from the road than the rear. And there is a patch that appears to be drying underneath the driver's side door handle. In all probability, it is a mixture of both the camera angle and flash, with the variable rate of drying to the surface of the vehicle. Now, the following photograph that you see in front of you was taken later on in the day, after the Range Rover had been recovered and taken to the police pound for further examination. In this photo, it is clear that flash photography has been used, and to some degree the same effect is captured in this shot. Where the shot is directed, the exposure shows clearly that there is a considerable amount of dirt and residue on the driver's side door that has been collected through driving. There is, however, evidence at this point that the area around the top and middle of the door has been cleaned in the process of the police fingerprinting process. There are also clear splashes of mud along the front wing and passenger door that you would have to assume were there in the photograph from down the lane, but were not visible at the time due to a combination of photo angle, process and evaporation of moisture. There are also a lot of runoff marks on both sides of the front door. These can be seen here as the swell marks close to the wing mirror. There is also a lot of dried silt on the driver's side door, suggesting that the vehicle wasn't cleaned prior to it being transported back to the police pound. Now, for those of you who may still believe that the Range Rover itself was transported via a trailer and dropped down the crime scene, we have something which actually counteracts that in a very basic term. One of the clearest indicators that the Range Rover travelled the full length of the lane itself without the assistance of a trailer is the amount of mud that has started to dry underneath the rear wheel arch, which is consistent with the same type of mud found on the tyre walls and tread. Also in this photo, the mud on the tyre tread looks to have dried a lot more than the photo in the lane, giving it credence to the notion that the Range Rover was probably still drying during the course of the day. The only part of cleaning that we can definitely see in this photograph comes from the driver's side wing mirror, which looks as if it's been cleaned, and this may have been part of the police process for fingerprinting. If you look at the bottom of the photo, there is what looks like some sort of soap or solution that has been used, that is collected on the plastic sheeting the Range Rover is sitting on. Does anyone know what this is or why it was used? Now, I know a lot of people still remain confused as to why the vehicle was found frost-free on the morning of December the 7th. It's important to remember, and something I actually missed out on a previous video, it's important to remember that frost generally only forms in the early hours of the morning. So whether the vehicle had been left there since 7 p.m. or after midnight wouldn't have made any difference as to whether the vehicle itself would have had frost on it or not, as frost generally only forms at around 5 or 6 a.m. As I mentioned at the start of this video, this collection of videos, as in this video here and the video I did previously regarding the frost-free Range Rover, these videos aren't made in order to give you a definitive explanation as to why the Range Rover was found with no frost on it, or why the vehicle appears to have been cleaned at the front of the Range Rover, but they're to give you different avenues and different explanations as to possibilities as to why the vehicle was found in this particular way. Now, some people may still remain convinced that this vehicle was wiped down after the crime was committed, either by the perpetrator or perpetrators of this crime, or by the police themselves before the Range Rover was taken away. I think ultimately, in general, we spend a lot of time looking at theories and thoughts as to why things may have been found or left in a certain way. But we don't spend enough time looking for logical explanations and possibly scientific reasons as to why the Range Rover was found in the way it was on the morning of December the 7th. Just to simplify what I said at the start of this video, I believe it's quite possible that the way in which these photographs were taken, as in flash photography, and the angles at which these photographs were taken, combined with the fact that the top of the vehicle would naturally drive faster than the bottom, may well give us the explanation as to why the Range Rover appears the way it does. And by looking at this photograph here, photograph B, we can see the swirl marks below the wing mirror. Now, this would indicate that it hasn't actually been cleaned with any sort of cloth or rag, as those swirl marks are still evident. And what we mean by the runoff from the A-pillar is, for instance, if the windscreen washers were in action during the car being in motion, that water would then seep into the seals along the frame of the windscreen, and as the vehicle's in motion, that water would then be pushed out from the side of those seals and go along down the side of the vehicle. That is what is then causing those swirl marks below the actual wing mirrors themselves. So this isn't someone who's tried to polish it with a rag or wipe down the vehicle with any type of cloth. These are simple, natural marks which would have been left by any sort of vehicle using their windscreen wipers during the vehicle being in motion. And if we take a look at the rear of the vehicle for one moment and look at the mud which is collected on the inside of the mud flap there, that is consistent with the mud which is found on the tyre tread itself, telling us that this vehicle was not carried down there on any type of trailer, that this vehicle has travelled the full length of the lane, which has caused the mud on the tyres and the mud which you see on the inside of the mud flap on the rear wheel arch. If you would like to learn more about the Range Rover murders as told in court, then please click on the video in front of you now. You'll also see the Essex Boys playlist, which has an array of separate videos regarding this case in one convenient folder. Many thanks for joining me for this video. I look forward to seeing you all again for the next one. Take care. Cheers.